Welcome to the Runna Podcast. I'm Ben, head coach.
And I'm Anya, international marathon runner, and we're proud to be the #1 rated running coaching service worldwide.
We'll be bringing insightful conversation with truly inspirational guests, as well as running tips and tricks for runners of all abilities.
Today on the podcast, we have the amazing Adrienne, who talks us through her journey into running, from balancing being a mother who runs marathons, to writing her own book, to being a podcast host, to being a public speaker. She's all about mindset and positivity, and you're really going to enjoy listening to her tips and tricks about self-belief. Enjoy the episode. Hello, Adrienne. How are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very well. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Let's start right at the beginning. How did you get into the health and fitness space?
Gosh, well, I guess right at the beginning, when I was young, when I was at school, I was very active, I was sporty. I was probably one of the only people who says that they enjoyed sports day. You know how everyone always says, like, sports day was the worst day ever. I was like, I loved sports day. So yeah, loved sports day. I did all the teams, netball, hockey, athletics, but I also did dance. So I started dance maybe when I was 10, which is quite late for the world of professional dance. So most of the girls in my class at the dance school had been dancing since they were literally walking, 2, 3, especially in ballet. So I started at 10, which was quite late. But by the time I was 16, I actually had auditioned and been accepted to go to a performing arts school not just outside of London, but I was doing athletics as well. I went to school up north in Leeds. So I've got the athletics coach at the track who's like, you can't leave. I was like, no, I'm going to London. I'm going to be on the stage. So that's what I did. I moved to London at 16 on my own, which most people go, what? And now as a parent, I do think, what? But yeah, I did that and trained for 3 years. And then by the time I was 19, I graduated and went into performing arts. So I was in musicals. I was in a Western musical on Tottenham Court Road called We Will Rock You, the Queen musical. Don't know if you ever saw it, but It was like iconic. It was there for about 10 years. And a lot of people don't know that about me. And then they're like, oh my gosh, you were actually a professional dancer in the West End at the age of 20, which is pretty wild. So I went from, I guess, like I said, sports, enjoying sports. Probably the furthest I'd ever run was, I did the 100 and the 200. So I called myself a sprinter. And then one day when I was at an athletics meet, we didn't have a 400 runner. And they were like, oh, Adrienne, you've done the 200. You could do the 4, right? And I naively was like, sure, all right, I'll go in, Oh my gosh, it is not the same. So trying to sprint 400 meters, that was probably my first ever test of endurance. That was endurance for me. Jamaican heritage, I was like 400, that was a lot. So obviously, like I said, had a career as a dancer, life goes on. But like with so many people, I'm sure sometimes things just happen in the course of your entire life changes. And that's essentially what happened to me when I was, how old was I? Maybe 22. So I was pregnant with my son. I was in the show. I'd had to kind of keep it secret, the bump, whilst I was doing the musical every night. And then, one night I kind of left the theatre and I said, I'll see you tomorrow. Went home. And then that night, my husband at the time, he was a very young, healthy, fit guy, PE teacher, training for the London Marathon himself, never had more than a common cold, healthy guy, became really unwell. Just literally one night he had a spontaneous brain hemorrhage. I was there, obviously. So, kind of had to call an ambulance and go to a hospital where we spent 2 weeks in a neurology ward. And I never went back to the show because I had said to them, see you tomorrow, thinking, I'll be back tomorrow. But I never went back because everything changed after that. So I was essentially at home for, about 6 months, really. I was kind of, became, at the time I didn't realize it, but became like a carer, because he wasn't able to work for a while. The brain hemorrhage led him to develop epilepsy. So I was learning about that. And by this point, my belly was out here. So baby on the way. So a lot of things you can imagine changed in 1 year of my life.
Yeah.
So it's almost like before and after. And then I had my son and, everything started to kind of pick up, I suppose. But mentally, I think it was really tough, like, as you can imagine, just to think how much your life can change just like that. It really put a lot of fear into me about life and health. Obviously I have a whole career now, 15 years in the wellbeing industry. But back then I didn't know about wellbeing. I didn't understand kind of what set me off, I suppose, on that path to understanding brain health, sleep, the impact of stress on our bodies, exercise, diet. I was just like, why did this happen? Like, how can you just be healthy, walking down the street, go to bed and have a brain hemorrhage? Like, how does that happen? So yes, it set me off on a bit of a journey, but it wasn't like an overnight thing. It wasn't like a an advert where you just like grab your running shoes, off you go. It was not that. I'd say the year after, like I said, was probably the toughest year of my life. And navigating motherhood and thinking like my life had just gone from being so expansive and big and doing different things. And I'm an extrovert, so I love to be around people. And I went into this kind of routine, I suppose, of just a very small, I felt like every day kind of felt the same. When it was winter, I remember January, February, just feeling like, oh my gosh, like I just felt so, I didn't have my mojo, my energy, my spark. I just didn't have it. So yeah, I should probably pause there. But that's, I guess, just when I figured out that actually maybe running outside, like for longer than 200 meters, was something that I would be interested in.
Wow. I mean, like, I feel like we just covered like 10 years.
Literally 10 years.
And I guess, were you super healthy and cared about doing wellness without knowing it was wellness when you were playing your sport, when you were doing your dancing, and performing on the West End, or not? In some ways. So I guess from an activity perspective, you'd say yes, because it's very disciplined. So training as a dancer, you're doing like, 10 hours a day. People don't realize, in the studio. So it's very physically demanding. I'd say from a nutrition perspective, oh my gosh, like I can't even believe the food I used to eat, like so much sugar, so much ultra processed food. And I think the idea was just like, but you need it for energy, like you need to fuel, like you can just eat loads of sugar. So I used to have a very high sugar diet, which now I just, kind of look at and go, wow, that was crazy. So from a nutrition perspective, no, I don't think I was as educated. I wasn't, around all the different things, I suppose. So was it your partner at the time going through that kick-started your focus to health and wellness?
Absolutely. Yeah. In so many ways, more than I could probably even realize at the time, because when we went to the hospital, obviously the doctors there, like kind of first responders, A&E, they kind of ask you like very limited questions. Has he banged his head? No. Has he taken drugs? No. That was it. There was nothing else. And I kind of thought, looking back now over that time, it's like there was no questions about lifestyle. Has he had a lot of stress? Has he had any recent grief, bereavement? These things can change the way our bodies function. And stress, we now learn so much about how stress can debilitate our physical and mental health. But this was, like I say, 15 years ago. And I just didn't have that awareness. I don't think, even like I said, the doctors, GPs, there wasn't a connection between the mind and the body, or even between the brain. And it's almost like these different parts of the body. So you've got like, I guess in health, maybe we still do this a little bit, but you've got like dentistry for your teeth. And then you've got, who do you see for your skin? You go to a dermatologist, thank you. And then you go see a chiropractor. And there's all these different sections.
I thought we were going to get like a quiz. And
all these different sections. And it was kind of like, but your body is connected, your mind, your body, they're all connected. And so one thing can have a knock-on effect to something else. I think I became a bit of a detective because there just no one could tell us why. And I don't know, maybe it's my personality. I'm such a like problem-solving person. I was like, there has to be a reason. You can't just, like I said, but they actually didn't actually ever give us a conclusive reason.
And at the time, had there been a lot of those, like those pressure circumstantial things that in hindsight maybe could have been a leading reason why that
I think so
happened?
I think so like I said, in hindsight it's easy to look back and think that, but and also you can't change it then.
And so as part of then your search for wellness, is that what led you to finding running, or did running come much later?
Well, I think running came first. So before I even knew what wellness as a term was, like I said, so I'm a new mum now, and I'm feeling fed up, I'm feeling stuck, I'm frustrated and just low energy and low mood. And I'd heard people talk before about, running so amazing and running the runner's high and the endorphins. And I was kind of like, I just wanted to try something different. Do you know what I mean? I just wanted to shift the state and feel different. So honestly, if I could find this photo, I really wish I had it to share with you, because I decided one day, I'm such a all or nothing person. It's like, right, I'm gonna go running. That's what I'm gonna do. And I didn't have any of the gear. I had like a vest from Topshop. I had one of those Nike armbands with the headphones here and the wires stuck in everywhere. I honestly think I was wearing, I don't want to say this, I think I was wearing Converse. Don't think I even had running shoes, honestly. Maybe trainers, I don't know. But I was like, I look cute, I am going running, and off I went. And honestly, I think like 15 minutes into this run, I was just like, hang on a minute, this is supposed to be fun, this is supposed to be amazing, this is supposed to be uplifting. I was like, this is awful, this is tough. I think I just went off like sprinting, Anyway, so I came back to the house, probably around about 15 minutes, maybe a bit more. And I thought, actually, I do feel different. And I don't say I felt great, but I felt different. And that's what I was after. So I think then it became like, okay, I'm going to do that again. And I did it again. And I kind of just kept going. And I think, you know, if I, again, looking back now, I can see how I was like, okay, I'm going to do my first race. It was like a 5K race for life in Cambridge. And again, I don't think I'd realised at this point that you don't have to run as fast as you can from the beginning. So I was like, trying to sprint. But I really enjoyed that because I think, yeah, a few of my family members came. My son by that point was probably like 2. He had a little sign. And I thought, you know, it's like I started to think about, I don't know, you start looking around and you see what people have got written on their shirts of like why they're running. And you don't know any of these people. I mean, you both know this from the running community. It's so incredible that straight away I thought, oh my gosh, like there's all these people. You know, any race I went to, you know, I started, you know, entering races. I started meeting people. At the time I was using Twitter and I was like, I don't know, there was like, I was finding like a community of new people. And I think, to be honest, at the time as well, I think I was finding a part of a new identity in myself. Because as I said, I just felt so like everything had changed in my life. Like the rug was just pulled from underneath my feet and I had no control. And I think in a weird way, I know that control is an illusion, but in a weird way, I think running gave me a little bit of structure that I felt a little bit of control for that like 20 minutes a day. Or maybe that was one thing in my day that I could have a bit of control over.
Yeah, I think that's probably why we all run. Like,
Right.
It's definitely why I do. And then at what point did you think, I'm going to do a marathon. I can do a marathon, going from someone who couldn't run more than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, and didn't even really get that runner's high from that 15 minutes. At what point did that all switch?
Yeah, so that was probably quite a few years later, probably about 4 or 5 years later. And I was still only running short distances. So I hadn't really got the bug for like endurance. To be honest, the fact that I do marathons even now, it still shocks me. So I basically got an opportunity. I think at the time I'd started, again, we're jumping forward, but I'd started like writing for publications, posting on social media. And it was actually through a brand. So it was through Adidas. So at the time I just started working as an ambassador for them. And this is years ago. So now, like, again, there's lots of, you know, brand ambassadorships is kind of quite, you know, common, but then it was quite like a new and novel thing. Adidas, I think, were one of the first brands to have ambassadors that were just, quote, normal people, you know, not professional athletes. It was just kind of weird. People were like, wait, you're an Adidas ambassador? And I was like, I know, it's pretty mad. So yeah, it came through them and they said, it was quite, not last minute, but obviously for someone who'd never done a marathon before, I think I got the ask in maybe January to do the London Marathon in April. So not that long. I think I probably had, let's say 12, 13 weeks, Not ideal for a first timer. So I was like, sure, yes, go for it. I'm going to do this. Said yes. I literally was on the phone. And then I was like, how to run a marathon? Better figure this out. Literally searched for like a training plan, how to fuel. Like I started from scratch and went, okay, so I guess this is my week 1. Let's go. And it was freezing because it was January. I've got this thing about running in this country in January. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's traumatizing. But yeah, that's the first one. And I don't know if we've got time for the story, but it was not cute, that marathon. It was not cute.
What went wrong?
Everything. So basically, I'll give you the short version and I'm not exaggerating. Got to the start line, Mrs. Motivator, I'm like, this is going to be amazing. Look at us. We're in London. We're running a marathon today. I'm doing my thing. I've got a couple of mates there. I'm like, guys, when we finish this race today, we will be marathon runners. Like, this is incredible. I'm doing the motivational speech. I'm high-fiving everyone. I am literally bouncing around the start line. I'm so happy. So we set off. I probably not sprinted, but I'm running too fast. I'm doing all the rookie errors, you know, mile 6, woo, cut your sock, great, you know, Tower Bridge. Oh my gosh, something happened after Tower Bridge. Literally, the batteries came out. That was it. And also, I should say, the year before that had been another tough year. I mean, honestly, you can't write it. But the year before that had been challenging because I'd been trying to have another baby for years. And then I had a pregnancy and a miscarriage literally a few months before. So again, I was kind of looking probably for that kind of, okay, let me just focus on something that I can do and control and uplifting. So I know, do a marathon. So I think I was probably quite depleted from that, both emotionally, physically. I was probably quite anemic. I was very skinny. Like if I look back at that time now, I'm like, oh my gosh, this poor little skinny girl, like was just there, like literally trying to complete this race. So yeah, mile 18, disaster. I'm walking, I'm hobbling. I'm just like, this is awful. My stomach felt bad. My legs felt bad. I didn't know how to fuel. I had never learned how to fuel. And so at that point, I think I took my first gel. Like, come on. Like, it was so bad.
Anything
It was so bad. It was just all the things that you just would say to someone now before running a marathon. Never do these 10 things. I did them all. But somehow managed to like drag my sorry self to the finish line. And then, you know, everyone says like the next day, they're like, oh, I can't wait to do it again. That was not me. I was like, I will never put myself through that ordeal again. I was literally like, why did I do this? I think I remember saying to people it was worse than childbirth. It was so bad. But I have gone on to run them since, and it's never been that bad again. So anyone listening who's put off, it does get better if you know what you're doing.
I think that's remarkable that then you did manage to like find the love of running again.
Exactly.
How did you find that? Was it like going back to running 15 minutes and teaching yourself that they don't all have to go that badly wrong? Or like, how did you reinvigorate that love of it?
Probably, yeah, going back to like, okay, you're a 10k runner or a 5k runner, so just stick with that for a while. And also community, you know, I think back then I was running with groups of people. So I was running with the London Midnight Runners. I was like one of the OG founders of that. Like, I'd have a little speaker. I would run with the Adidas women's running on a Wednesday night. It was a female only run in Shoreditch. So I think the community thing really helped, because I was just like, okay, you don't have to run a marathon, but you do like running and you want to run with your mates. So yeah, I kind of went back to it. But again, I tell that story because I think so many people probably have that experience and then sadly probably never run a marathon ever again. You know, if they have that kind of thing. Or they just, I don't know, feel like, I don't know, like embarrassed, or there's like so much pressure now. And I think, like I said, maybe because I've got more knowledge, and I think like the running world, there's so much more knowledge sharing. So I think maybe, hopefully, people wouldn't do a marathon and then have that experience.
Do you think when you went back to running the second time, you almost had a more holistic approach to health and fitness? Because when I think about like my first marathon or your first marathon, it doesn't actually sound like you were that healthy. Like, as in like you said, you didn't know how to fuel, or like you weren't the happiest in yourself. So I think that's easy to fall into. Like, running isn't always like the healthiest way, like, and you're going to get the longevity and the enjoyment and everything when you see it as this like holistic health and wellness and like help you with that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's it's reflective, isn't it, of where you are, I guess, in like a mental state. It can be for so many people, I think. So I definitely think, you know, now, it's the whole holistic thing, as you say, whether it's strength training, sleep, recovery, nutrition. You know, I enjoy running so much more because it's part of this whole thing. And I think I give myself more time. I've got more patience maybe now. You know, I think, like I said, I found out in January I was doing it, and then it's suddenly you've got to cram in this training. And like I said, I still had a young child, you've still got other commitments, you've still got work, you know, there's all these competing things. So I think just setting your alarm and getting up and going out and just sticking to the plan, I think that was something that I didn't know I could adapt the plan. I didn't know that I didn't have to do all the runs in the plan. And I think I was just, I think I was probably overtraining. I was probably exhausted by the time I got to the start line, which is the opposite of what you want. You know, start line, you should be feeling fresh. And I've learned that, as I said, and now I know how to train.
And presumably that marathon, amongst everything else that you had been through, really taught you so much about mental perseverance and your mindset. Would love to learn about like how you think about that now.
Yeah, wow, gosh, again, so many parts of my life, I suppose I've had to really interrogate what is mindset. You know, I'm sure we hear a lot of people talking about positive mindset, growth mindset. We hear the word a lot, right, in the world of sports and business. So I guess, interrogating what it actually is. So first and foremost, our mindset is, you know, really simply, it's how we view situations, how we view the world, what we believe to be true and also possible for ourselves and for our lives. So yes, I've definitely tested that in many ways. And I think when you really start to understand that your mindset is not static, it's not something that you just have. So, okay, Ben, this is your mindset, Anya, this is yours. No, it is something that is fluid and changes. You might have heard of neuroplasticity, this idea that the brain is malleable. We can learn new skills, we can learn new behaviors, just like you can learn a tennis serve if you've never played tennis before. It might take you a long time, but you can do it. This is the kind of simple things that you need to acquire any skill. So I think it's the same with the mindset, is when you understand, and for anyone listening who's maybe not nodding along going, yeah, neuroplasticity, if you're like, what is that? Essentially, really simple way to think about this. If you imagine a field of really long grass and you walk straight from one side to the other, and it's like a little path where you've walked, and then you walk again and again and again and again, and you can start to imagine this like path through the grass. So that's one way of doing something. So that's one way of thinking. That's one route in the brain. Now, if I said to you, okay, just go a little bit to the right, a little bit more, now walks through the grass again. So it's like the tall grass, you've got the effort of like going through that grass again to lay a new path. That's essentially a really simple way to think about how our brains often work. If there's a simple path that's kind of clear and, you know, trodden, we will take that path because it's less effort, less energy, less resistance. But neuroplasticity is essentially choosing the next path. It's a bit more resistance, a bit more effort required. It's harder, but if you keep doing it for long enough, that will become the new path and the grass will grow in the old path. So I love that because it always reminds me that it doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter what's happened previously. It doesn't define the choice that you make now or who you want to be or what you want to achieve. And so, yeah, mindset is something that, I mean, I could talk about all day, but it's incredibly important. When people start to understand, oh, wow, I can change my behaviors, my choices, my view, my interactions, my experiences, my relationships, everything can change. It's never too late if you choose a different path.
I think, yeah, it's so interesting. And I came on your podcast and spoke to you about mindset because that's something like I've struggled with. But talking about like your potential there, like mindset's knowing your potential. I love thinking about your limiting self-beliefs. If you think you can't do something, there's as much truth in that and there's much evidence to prove that, which there's none, of like you being like, I can do something that you never thought you could. So just believe that you can do it and you'll have a totally different outlook because, yeah, there's no more truth in saying you can't do it than you can do it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think the thing that follows it, though, is, you know, I mentioned there's two things that you need for any kind of skill acquisition. The first is deliberate practice and the second is repetition. And I'm sure when it comes to running, okay, that makes sense, but it applies to everything, you know, so everything you just said, okay, think of a goal, you know, I talk a lot about goal setting. Think of a goal and someone goes, well, if you believe you can do it, you can. Yeah, sure, but not if you just sit on this couch for the next 10 years, you can't. Deliberate practice and repetition. That is as simple as that. You can give a 10-step process, a 20-step. No, deliberate practice and repetition. It sounds boring, but you also shared when you were on my show, other way around, that you were like, oh, you know, consistency. You just said that as if it's something that, well, you know, everybody knows that. Consistency is harder than it sounds. It's not natural for us to be consistent. We're inconsistent as human beings. You know what I mean? Like throughout different seasons, we're just inconsistent. So the idea of consistency is quite paradoxical in some way, but that's what that is, right? Consistent, deliberate practice. Practice and repetition.
But I guess that's the point around consistency, is that it needs to be that deliberate practice. Is that like we could not easily, because as you said, we're not consistent beings like by nature, but like we could just turn up to do the thing over and over and over. But if we're not doing the thing with intention, as in, you could wake up at 8:30 and go on a bit of a run and really not really bother that much, and then you're not going to suddenly become the best runner in your village.
Yeah.
But if you turn up at 7 a.m. and you really like know what you're doing today and you do it hard, then you'll end up being very, very good 5 years later. And I think it's that like we can't just have the consistency. We need to have it with that intention.
Yeah, I think...
and then believing that you stack those two things together, it will go somewhere. And then knowing that belief is what helps you to be consistent and to be consistent and work hard.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what obviously you've done so brilliantly with Runna and with the plans, right? It's exactly that. It's not just be consistent, run. Just run.
Yeah, otherwise it needs to be as an alarm.
Yeah, just run. Just that simple, like I said, not the deliberate practice, but just the behavior of running. You know, maybe sometimes, I think a lot of runners probably guilty of that for a long time, right? You're just like, well, I'm running. I'm a runner. I'll just run. But actually, I think you're completely right. Once you add a structure, which might say, okay, the duration, the intensity, all the different things that you have within a training plan, that's deliberate practice. That's sticking to something that is structured. And that's where the consistency piece, really pays off.
I think the type of person that I'd always get most excited about when they would come and meet me as a coach and still when they now come and train with us at Runna is someone who's run for a long time and they've like learnt to practice consistency, but they've never had almost the deliberate side to know what they should actually be doing. So they may well be able to run for a while. They've got a great endurance, but they have no idea about structure. They don't run and push themselves to run fast. Or maybe they're the type of person that consistently runs their hardest every single time they go running. You then go and give them the right structure, they improve faster than anyone. Because you have the people that, you have the opposite end of the spectrum who've been flawlessly doing it for a very long time. It's very hard to massively step change their performance.
Yeah.
But it's that person who may well be practicing the consistency and trying their hardest, but because they're not trying with that they're trying to be deliberate, but they're not really deliberately doing the right things.
Yeah.
Going and giving those two things in combination is what leads someone to be great at something, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. And also, I saw a stat yesterday actually, and I thought about, I knew I was coming here, and it said that 2/3 of runners, I think this is UK stat, are overtraining. And actually, I think to your point there around improvement and consistency, it's so counterintuitive, isn't it, to say to some people, actually, you probably need to do less to improve, to have more time to recover, to allow those adaptations to take place. Because it does feel like, well, just more is better. The more often I'm running, the more distance I'm running, the faster. It's not always the case.
And I think there's like two types of maybe like mindsets of people who are training for running goals. You probably have the hyper motivated people, which is probably like the three of us most of the time, who doing relatively, we want to go out and push ourselves and do the very best we can, and we need a coach to like tell us when to stop. And then you have the other side of the spectrum where the people who aren't so motivated, who need a coach to go out and start.
Yeah.
And I think it's like there's very much a happy balance, and both sides need that accountability and support to make sure that their consistency is deliberate and they're not just being too consistent, turning up 3 times a day every day and running like crazy, because then they'll overdo it. And the same side the other way around, which is actually probably just doing the once a week, you're not going to achieve your big goal.
Yeah, you're right. The two different sides, exactly. That kind of loops back to mindset, doesn't it? Around like understanding and kind of doing that work to interrogate your personality, like the way that you approach things and why, and kind of, you mentioned, Anya, limiting beliefs earlier on. And if people, again, haven't really thought much about that or heard that before, it's just even just a simple thing of understanding, like when you were young, when you were at school, what were the things that, I guess, like the labels or the things that were said to you and about you, whether that's by teachers, friends, parents, not always ill-intended, but people can put us in a box. And if we think and keep ourselves in that box, that I'm not sporty, for example, or I'm not smart, or, oh, you're impatient, or, oh, you're too loud, or, oh, you're shy, like you can keep that. And actually 30 years later, you are none of those things, but you still believe them to be true. So I think when you said then around the unmotivated person, or maybe someone who needs more direction, sometimes they need to prove to themselves what's possible. Because, for example, and everyone talks about, your story and saying, did you ever think you could do that? And some people, they so underestimate, not just in running, but just in life, they so underestimate themselves, their potential, what they can do. And they sometimes need someone else to go, of course you can do that. You can do that, whatever it is, run that speed, or you can run that far, or you can start that business, or you can lead those people. And I think often, that's what I enjoy so much about the work that I do, essentially. I feel like I always say I see people's potential before they do, because I'm like, of course you can do that. And I think we all need more encouragers, maybe.
Yeah. We all have points in races where we suddenly, our minds be like, you can't do this, or I can't do this, or in a hard session. Is there anything or any tips you have for us to do in the preparation, in the weeks leading up, in the training to, get our mindsets ready for like that race?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, probably I'll give you 3 things. So number 1 is, I guess, is the anticipation and accepting exactly what you just said. There's going to be a moment that's going to be hard. Maybe the whole thing's going to be hard. I always have said this for years, you can do hard things, but what do I mean when I say that? What I mean is accepting and expecting it to be hard, because there's something very kind of freeing about that in a way. It's quite liberating to go, I'm not expecting it to be easy and then like surprised that it's hard. I'm just like, this is going to be painful. This is going to be tough. This is going to suck. So I'm kind of like getting myself in that headspace that's like, come on, like this is going to be really hard. And you're a badass because you're going to do it. So there's that. Second one is, I think when you feel that moment, so you're, like you said, you're in the middle of a race, maybe you're towards the end and you're like, oh, wow, this is, I don't think I can do it. Why have I said I'd do this? And the doubt creeps in. I think really zoning in on kind of that moment rather than how far you've got left or whatever, and just thinking, okay, this moment, everything passes, doesn't it, in life, good or bad. So just this moment now, just think about the next 60 seconds, the next kilometer. Like I really try and do that. Like I'm not the most mindful Zen person. I'm not going to pretend that I am, but I think that's a really useful thing in the moment, to just not think about before, after, just focus right now. Okay, the next 20 seconds, count it down in your head. 20 seconds, just keep doing that. And before you know it, you're like, oh, I'm over that like hurdle. I did say I was going to give you 3 because I thought of 3 straight away. What was the third one? So in the moment. Oh yes. The third one is to remind yourself of all the preparation and the deliberate practice that you have done. Because, I mean, hopefully you've done enough. Because we all know when we haven't, you go, oh, I've kind of, you get to the start line going, oof, this is going to hurt. But I think when you've done the prep and you've stuck to a plan and you've worked on your nutrition, you've done the strength sessions, you've done some core work, like you can kind of start, like reaping the rewards of that. And so I think in those hard moments, that's also something that I'll do is I'm like, Adrienne, you've done the work for this. You know what I mean? Like, you've got strong legs, you've got a strong core, you've got a strong mind. Like, you have got the strength to do it because you've done that 12 weeks, 10 weeks, 20-week plan. So yeah, I think giving yourself that recognition for the hard work and the prep can help as well.
Have you always had a mind that's powerful to do what it can do now? As in, like, do you mean because it's clearly that you understand how to get the most out of yourself.
Yeah.
And do you mean you're a mum, you encountered everything that you did as early on with the partner at the time. Do you mean an amazing career in dancing, and now you've made an amazing career in a huge pivot in another direction. You had your amazing kind of running along the same time. Have you had to learn mindset yourself, or has it always been inbuilt in you? Because I think some people look at Anya, who gets out every day and runs her laps at Battersea Park, or doing you do what you do, and doing people who do relentless, committed, hard things, and they just think, oh, I'm not like that. Yeah. Like, have you had to learn this, or have you unpacked the way that you think, and then you're telling people to try and think like you?
I think it's a combination of the two. So I'd never say to someone, oh, think like me or do it like me. But I think it's a combination of the two. I think we've all got, nature and nurture. I think we've all got DNA, we've all got personalities and character, and all the things in our life, like I was mentioning before, things you're told, they can impact you for better or for worse. And sadly, I think mine wasn't a case where I'd say I grew up being told, like, you can do anything, Adrienne, go for it. And so that's why I have this mindset. Mine was probably the other way around. I grew up, my mum was a single mum. She had a low income. There was, she had to look after a lot of kids. And I went to school and kind of got on with it myself, got myself to school on the bus. I picked my brother and sister. I was very self-sufficient at a young age. I think I was kind of parentified, actually. I had to kind of grow up quick. And I think in a way that, we talked before about confidence. I think it taught me confidence because I was capable, because I had to be. So I think because I had to figure things out, I was like, oh, there's no one to kind of go, I just have to do it. So I think partly it's due to nature, nurture, my personality, my character, learning to kind of rely on myself, learning to be disciplined, because I don't know, I had friends at school who maybe their parents would tell them off if they didn't do homework, but my mum was at work, so if I didn't do it, doesn't matter. I had to be self-disciplined to go, I've got to get this done. So I think there's that. I think there's been times in my life, of course, where I've had self-doubt or more recently, I'd say imposter syndrome. I've been in spaces now where whether it's in the, the work that I do in the wellbeing industry, I'm on boards for different organizations, or I'm advising companies, or I'm doing this work where I look around and I'm the only, I'm the youngest in the room. Often I'm the only woman of color in the room. And I look around and I'll look at literally a boardroom full of white men in suits. And I'll kind of go, and you might have that moment of, well, the imposter syndrome feeling of what's my contribution here? What have I got to add? And again, it's those same reminders of going, well, you've been asked to come and do this for a reason. So all, like I said before, around the training and the prep that you've done, all of the work and the training and prep that I've done professionally is what's led to those moments, or being on the stage delivering the keynote. So I still feel it. I still think that you have to work that mindset muscle to remember and practice all these things, whether it is in running or in something else. But I think it's definitely nature and nurture and just a part of my DNA, I guess.
Because it's almost like practice from an early age, by the sound of it, that you were at a disadvantage maybe to other people around you who had more support from their parents, let's say.
Yeah.
And you still did it anyway. And you're like, well, I can do this, even at a disadvantage. And now you're taking on a new challenge where you don't think you've got this huge advantage, but you've done it before, so you can do it again. And it's that previous accomplishment that maybe gives you the confidence to take on these amazing challenges and do so well at them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think more people could do that. How
do we help someone who maybe doesn't have that maybe practice sense of confidence that you managed to find?
Yeah.
To find that same confidence, to then create that positive loop, because in a way, now you have this amazing confidence, and you'll sign up for a marathon knowing that you can do the training, and you'll hopefully go and complete it and then do a great run. And I'll do the same with challenges that I do. But for someone who maybe doesn't have that starting point of self-belief to then go and achieve something and reinforce it and build up this amazing positive confidence, how do they get started?
Yes, that's a good point. I think to start is to look at what they have done, because everyone's done something. Everyone. And even if you've had support, you've still done it. If someone said, okay, did you study and get a degree? And they go, yeah, I did. Well, who got the degree for you? Who sat the exam for you? It wasn't your parents. It wasn't your teacher. It was you. You did do that. So I think looking at that list of achievements or things that you've done, or hard things, things that maybe you thought you weren't that good at, but actually you got through it anyway. I think we've all done that. Everyone in life has done that. So I think starting there and going, and no, it doesn't matter how small it is either. It doesn't have to be this huge achievement. It can just be that. And I think if it applies to running, I mean, this is why running is such a good example of all these metaphors for everything else in life, is because it's not a direct correlation, but I feel like there's so much with running, you know, the effort that you put in and then what you get out, you can kind of start to see the linear progress. And that's proof. So I think setting yourself, even if you're starting from day one now, setting yourself something that says, I am going to achieve X in the next 10 days, and then do it, like actually do it. Do you know what I mean? Don't like, and also before you, okay, so set yourself a target. I want to do this in the next 10 days. Then write a list of 3 excuses or reasons or blockers or barriers that could prevent you from achieving it. Look at that list. Get real about it. You know what I mean? Be honest with yourself, because life happens. There'll always be something. But I think when you really want to do something, you kind of find a way and you'll go, okay, that could stop me. I'm going to make sure it doesn't.
There's a technique for that, and I don't know what it's called, but like we will do that from a business perspective as well, which is like, if you imagine we're going to do this new big risky challenge as a business that we need it to go right, we'll like think, okay, how could it go wrong?
Exactly.
And not only do you need to then, like, as you said, like get real with those things and just like man up in a way, but what you can also do is like unpack each one and be like, okay, well, how can I like reduce the risk of that one becoming my excuse? Like, imagine it's that you're going to be really tired from X. Okay, well, could you reduce the risk of that by going to bed earlier or having caffeine earlier in the day, or whatever it's going to be? And each micro thing, make it 10% less chance of being your stumbling block. And you add that all together and you're like way less likely to have those 3 excuses being the thing that like holds you back. Exactly.
You can mitigate against them. So yeah, you're completely right. This kind of, as you said, there's probably lots of different words for it, but it made me think it's kind of contingency planning or scenarioing, where you kind of exactly right go,
disaster planning, I think is like the thing.
Yeah, if all these things went wrong, what would we do? So I think if you look at those things, then exactly right, you can start to mitigate the chance of them happening. And then also if they do, it's not an instant failure, we'll give up then. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like so much of the time we hold ourselves to this, a lot of people do, especially high achieving people, of an all or nothing mentality, when actually, let's say, I always talk about this, like how many exams have you ever done in your life where you need 100% to pass? There's none. Like a driving test, a university exam, there's no exam that says you need 100%. It might be 70 or 80. But why do we then hold ourselves to this? Unless it's 100, it's a fail. So, you know, if it's 70 or 80, let's say you get 8 out of 10. Are you going to call that a failure or a success? I guess you have to decide. But yeah, I think listing out things that could stop you from achieving it is the first way to start.
I guess attached to that as well, like the consistency isn't like consistently and every day getting 100% score. It's often 5 days a week or 4 days a week, not 7 days a week, having quite a good day. And then on average, you're having better days than bad days, and you're probably moving in the direction of your goal. And some days you might have 3 days in a row where you go slightly backwards, but like on the big picture, by being consistent, you do work towards the goal. And I think also, like, if you start something knowing that you need to be quite good quite often, that's a lot easier than knowing you need to be flawless and perfect every day forever. And I think, like, if you hear like, oh, start off with consistency and deliberate practice, we're not saying you need to be perfect. We just need to do it quite a lot of the time. And you don't need to have the 100% score with your practice. It's make it better than bad, and then you'll slightly move in the right direction.
Absolutely. And then zoom out on your timeline, because even then, when you said 3 bad days, when you think about an injury, like, it's like the worst thing ever, isn't it, for a runner? And they probably make it worse because they just keep running anyway and trying to, you know, avoid the rest part. But if someone said, okay, you need 6 weeks off running, they're just like, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever. But just zoom out on your timeline. Let's say you're going to run for 5 years. 6 weeks, not that long.
I mean, like, Annie, you're a perfect example of that, which is that if we like looked at like a week of your training 5 years ago, let's say, or 4 years ago, whenever it was you're training for that first marathon, and you might be in an hour not running as far as you can run now in an hour, and then you're looking at someone who's like 5 years, or someone who's running a 2:34 marathon now, and you're like, I'll never be able to achieve that. But actually, you were doing from day 1 to day 7, you're on like a slightly upward graph, and if you looked at day 1,300, let's say that's what you're now, you scale that line out, it does get to where you are now. But like, I guess having the confidence that, like, even though we're looking at like days 1 to 7, that on that path you will get to where you want to get to on day 1,300 and whatever it is today. And actually, when we realize that like we might be going on a 2,000 day journey, so exciting to think like you made it to where you are today, and you're not on a 2,000 day journey, you're probably on a 8,000 day. I don't know. I would hope and imagine you're going to run to your 70 or 80. So you're still so early on at the start, and hopefully that's also exciting to think like, look at where the line's going. Like, I don't think you'll end up being able to get your marathon to like 3 seconds on the same trajectory, but I'm sure it will slightly flatten off, but it should be a really exciting.
But it is perspective, because back then I was so happy with the trajectory I was going on, and now I almost look and I'm like, oh, that wasn't the best session in the world. But if I'd done that back then, like I would have been so happy. And like, yeah, you just those little bits.
Yeah.
I think if we all had you in our pocket every day, we would all be very happy, and we'd get out the door and we'd feel great. Are you as kind to yourself as you are to everyone listening? And what sounds like your outward philosophy, are you that kind to yourself, or do you have the days where you're mean in your own head to yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's definitely changed over time. It's funny that you say kind to yourself, because I often think that this like my way or my approach can be perceived as quite hard in a way, because I'm kind of like I'm saying, like, you know, write the list of excuses and like face up to them, and also like it's gonna be hard but you can do it anyway. But as you're saying, you're like, I don't know, it's kind of, yeah, you don't want to be that sergeant major, you know, to yourself, like berating yourself to doing things because you have to. And I think maybe I used to do that. I think we all at some point in our life, maybe, I don't know, I definitely have done that in the past, where I felt as though, you know, David Goggins style, like that's the way I'm going to achieve. And I think maybe, again, that's just who I am. So I don't want to lie about that and be like, you know, I'm always kind to myself. Like, I think it's a balance between kind to yourself in the moment and kind to your future self. You know what I mean? Like, what's the future goal? Like, I'm sure, for example, yourself, you know, running a business is incredibly challenging and wonderful as an entrepreneur, but you know, I know that life, right? And startup life. And I'm sure there are challenges to it, but you're being kind to your future self when you make decisions today, just like you are when you run, because like we talked about getting to the start line, if you've done the training, you're better off at the start line. So it's like the morning when it's 5 a.m. and the alarm goes off and it's like, oh, you know, you could being kind to yourself doesn't always mean, well, pull a duvet over, go back to sleep, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself can be do the hard thing now, because it's going to pay off in the future. So yeah, I'm not sure really. I think it's probably a combination of both. I've probably got both the sergeant major voice and the cheerleader as well.
Yeah, I think so often when I find myself being hard on myself, I have to remember what I would have told one of my running clients.
Right.
And I'd have been like, no, like, you're great, you did 3/4 of that session, and don't worry for like stopping early, you did 3/4. And like, I don't say that to myself, and sometimes I have to try and say what I would say if I had myself as a client, and then treat yourself like that. Good. But no, it's good really advice. Interesting to hear. Shall we segue off to Steph, who's going to come in with our coaching tip of the week?
My top tip today is on pacing your run sessions. Hitting the paces in training can feel quite hard, but the more practice and experience you have, the easier it will become. To start off with, I'd recommend building into your sessions, starting off more slow and nice and controlled, and progressing the effort. Starting controlled so you can finish nice and strong.
Thank you very much. That's Steph. I think a topical discussion for us to have now is, if there's anyone listening who's, you know, doing a hard session at the moment and needs that bit of motivation, what is your number one mantra or something you think about when the going gets tough?
Who wants to go first?
I can.
Go for it.
Okay, you go, Anya.
I think it's kind of inspired by what you were saying, Adrienne, but I often think about, remember that time when you did something that you didn't think you could? Yeah, do that again. And that's what I think about. Like, no matter how small that thing was, like in a race, I'm like, just do that again. Just do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what goes through my head. How about you?
It was quite similar to mine, so I'm going to pivot and choose something else. No, I was thinking you've done hard things before, so you can do hard things again. I guess to add to that, I would probably think there probably will be a day in the future. You just mentioned Anya running until she's 80 or 90. There probably will be a day in the future when you can't do what you can do today. But today's not that day, you know, so go for it.
I was going to say something similar.
No pressure.
But I think I'll make mine like similar, but different, but more like tangential specifically to running. I think when I'm uninjured and I'm in a condition that I could go out and train, and I don't because I'm like feeling lazy, feeling demotivated. Sometimes I don't nail it. And then when I'm injured and it's raining and I'm feeling unfit, I think I would like nothing more than going out and doing a session, but I can't because I have an injury. Or also, if I can't because I have a back-to-back day of work all day long, there's nothing I would like more than just like going out running even though it's raining.
Yeah.
But then sometimes when I have time, like it's the weekend and it's sunny and then I can't be bothered. And I need to remember how much I would like to be doing this thing, even if it was cold and raining, but I couldn't back then, and like almost harnessing that desire and taking it with me when I'm unmotivated, but I have the option to do it. And it's kind of like the grass is almost greener. Like once you have this like weekend and it's sunny and you have time to go out on a run, you're like, oh, I actually can't bother anymore.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, no, you do love it, and you know how good it makes you feel, and that like you need to do it now because there'll be times when you can't. And like whether that's because you're 90 or whether that's because you're busy at work or whether that's because you're injured. So like do it now because you're like lucky that you have the option today. And like it's hard because not always will we feel motivated, but like finding your own thing, and I think that's the one that helps me.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Make the most of it.
Cool. Right, well, we're gonna make things slightly less serious now.
Okay. It has been very heavy, hasn't it? Especially my like I said, I was like, I don't know, was it?
I feel like we need to get out and just go for a run.
I know.
Now, like let's go and run 3,000 marathons back to back, not stop. And no, I'm joking. So we're gonna present you some little that's, and you're gonna pick which of them sounds less ridiculous.
Okay.
So, would you rather wear wet socks every day for the rest of your life, or wear winter gloves on your hands every day for the rest of your life?
Winter gloves every day. Wet socks is the worst, and I often have cold hands, so gloves would be great for me.
I feel like you do quite a lot of things where gloves might get a little inconvenient.
They might, but I'm just wet socks. No, it's a no from me.
How often do you type?
I do type every day.
How often do you use your phone?
I type every day. What, you're saying I can't use a touchpad with these gloves on?
No, with the winter gloves.
Oh. I'm still sticking with it. I can't. Wet feet all the time. It's a no. The last marathon I ran in London, it rained the whole time, and I had to run with wet socks and wet trainers.
How wrinkly your feet would get.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going with gloves. I'm going to have to use audio instead of typing.
I reckon AI can help you out.
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. I'm sticking with it.
As long as I don't get trench foot, I'm going wet socks.
I feel like there'd be some athlete's foot going on.
Oof.
As long as like we're immune to all of that, I'm doing wet socks.
Well, so you have wrinkly feet that doesn't cause any health issues.
Yeah.
Wet
socks. I just hate sweaty hands. I've got sweaty feet.
Oh,
a lot of the time,
actually, you'd probably get wet hands from the thick winter gloves in summer.
In summer. And also you're going to have to think about outfit choices if you've constantly got these accessories. But
Yeah,
not a concern for you, Ben.
Wouldn't need to get your nails done.
What are you saying, that I'm not very fashionable?
No, I feel like you were like, not important.
Oh, okay. I think you dug yourself out the hole there.
What are you, Ben?
Not a concern for you, Ben, who's always unfashionable.
Well, you're wearing flip-flops, so how are you going to have wet socks? In fact, I think
I could wear wet toe socks.
I think every time I've seen you've had toes out.
Yeah.
Got to air them out.
Got the dogs out.
The dogs.
So which one are you choosing?
I think I'll go wet socks.
Wow. Out 2 against 1.
I'm a very hot person.
I'm quite hot in here.
Yeah, I'm a bit hot.
I'm quite hot in here right now.
I think if I had gloves on, I would have also wet hands. So I don't think it'd be very good. Okay, right. Would you rather have a pause button on your life that you can press when you like, or a rewind button and go back and do it again?
Pause. Absolutely. I think about this frequently. Did you ever watch Bernard's Watch?
No, I also think about this a lot. But
it's a TV show, and I feel like as a kid, it was like he could pause time.
Yeah.
That's the best. Yeah, pause. Absolutely pause.
How would you use the pause time?
Oh my gosh. You know, when you're just doing something, you're like, this is so great. You just don't want it to end. I would just pause. I don't know, it's obviously...
just like soak it up and be like,
yes!
And then get back into it.
Yeah. Pause. Okay. Pause when things are just...
Why wouldn't you want to just rewind and do it 5 times over? Or would you like do it badly the second time and then like undo your whole life?
No, I think I wouldn't want to rewind because, wow, this is deep, because I feel like the idea of finitude makes things more amazing and enjoyable, and because you know something is going to end. So anything from like, poetic sunset to like, I don't know, a delicious meal to anything in your life, knowing that it's going to end makes it more special. But if you knew you could just go back and do it again and again and again, we take things for granted, don't we? So you'd be like, oh, this again. I think doing it once makes it more special. Pausing and being like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, I'm just going to press pause and enjoy it for longer is what I would choose.
What are you in?
Exactly the same. You know those moments, or crossing the line at London Marathon, when you're just like, this is the best feeling ever and I just want to bottle it up. I want to pause it on those moments.
There would be a few times though when you could just like a little mistake, you could rewind and be like, oh, didn't make that.
True.
Yeah.
Like imagine.
It's like Back to the Future.
Imagine like when you roll your ankle, you could just rewind and make one step different.
That
could be quite handy.
Everything happens for a reason though.
Or like you farted. You could have just
Go back and
you
not.
could have just made it a silent one. I feel like there'd be a lot of use cases that would actually make it quite practical, whereas all you could do is pause and be like, I farted and that sucks, and you then go to unpause and just.
But again, this is our mindset, you see. So we might be more optimists, going towards the positive of like focus, and you're going to the negative, which like something bad happens, you can undo.
I am a huge optimist,
but
that's why I'd only rewind the small stuff.
Okay.
I think the big stuff that goes wrong, like, teaches you who to be who you are now.
Yeah.
But like the small stuff, it's just a bit inconvenient. You could just polish that out.
Not sure what it says about me that I suddenly started thinking about like, oh, you could go back and win the lottery. You could pick your stocks and shares based upon that.
True. I didn't think about it. I just thought about
be a billionaire.
Yeah, you're now a really smart
We all went
businesswoman,
really emotional.
and I'm a childish man who wants to not fart in public.
You don't want to fart, and I want to fraud the stocks and shares market.
Okay.
Edit that out. We'll rewind and edit that out.
Yeah, and I'll stop saying about farting and rewind and edit that out. Okay, right, last one. Would you rather never be able to post or consume any form of social media ever again?
Oh.
Or have to eat the same dinner every day for the rest of your life?
Oh my gosh, the first one. Well, I mean, I do certain dishes I wouldn't mind having every day. But yeah, I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a quick decision. I feel like straight away I'm like, yeah, the first one, get rid of it. But maybe that's quite short-sighted.
It's also somewhat orientated around your career in
I
some
know,
aspects.
I know it is, but you said consume, so I feel like
or
if it was
post,
just,
or
but
use it in any way.
Yeah, that's the thing. If it was just post and I could still consume it, then I could still see what everybody else was doing. Then you'd have the FOMO and the thing. But if you couldn't see it, and after a while, it's like out of sight, out of mind.
So it's actually it would be worse to be able to consume it but not be able to
Yeah, it's like you said, it's like watching the race but you can't run, I think, or doing something you can't get involved in. If you can't, out of sight, out of mind. If I couldn't see it, then I'd be like, okay, fine. But I think if I couldn't, so I think it was all or nothing. Like I said, I'm quite binary, all or nothing kind of gal. Then I'd take nothing. But equally, to be honest with you, if you said I had to have a prawn pad thai every day for the rest of my life, I'd be fine with that.
So what are you
So
choosing?
which one am I choosing?
You're basically fine with both.
I'm fine with both. Which one should I choose? I should probably choose to have a pad thai every day for the rest of my life and still use social media as you said, it facilitates many other things in my life and career. So
what about you? Is it a big part of your career?
I think I would be on a soapbox on the side of Hyde Park Corner and I will do my speaking to my audience.
In person?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I wouldn't do
clever.
social media. Yeah.
But it's also part of my job at Runna. I also could eat the same food all the time forever.
what would yours be?
My food. I have lots of them. There's like lots of foods that I could eat every day for the rest of my life and I'll be okay with.
Yeah, same. Such creatures of habit. I think we're both
I'd
are.
be fine with that, to be honest.
So that's maybe the consistency that we're like.
See?
We're kind of like,
See?
we're well trained.
Well, you know what's good? You like
Yeah.
stick to it. And you know when people say, I have this discussion sometimes with people about a menu and they'll go, choose something new. And I'm like, no. Like, why?
The risk and
Thank
reward
you.
is so low.
And the disappointment. Yeah.
I know if I've eaten somewhere and had a 8 out of 10 meal,
Pick it
I
again.
am okay with 8 out of 10. Like
Yeah.
I will forever eat that meal.
I love
because
this.
I would hate to go to that restaurant and order something experimental that could get an 8.5 in a very unlikely scenario, or get a 6, and then I'm miserable knowing that I could have eaten the 8 the whole time. And so,
Ben, I feel like we've just bonded here. Honestly, like even a cocktail menu or the specials. Don't tell me the specials. I don't want it, because basically you're going to pick it and you're going to go, oh, that sounds interesting, and then you're going to not like it. You're going to look at mine and go, I shouldn't have ordered this. No, you shouldn't.
so I always try and order last, because
Okay.
if anyone is ordering, I need to know what they've ordered, because I need to know that like if they've got that nice sounding lasagna, I need to wait to then make sure that I don't have to watch someone eat a lasagna that I would have wanted. So I gather what's going on and then I make sure that I order. Because
informed
otherwise,
decision.
but if no one wanted if I'm weighing between 2 options
Yeah.
and someone orders the other one, I need to order that one as well, because otherwise if that one ends up being better than mine
And you get
and I have to watch them eat the good one and then I'm again regretting it.
Ben, do you know what you are? You're a maximizer, but I'll save that for another day.
I thought you were about to say you're crazy.
Well, I mean, and that. You said that. But no, I'll tell you about that another
Okay,
day.
you
But
teach me.
you're a maximizer.
Is a
But
maximizer a good thing, or is it like the world's biggest insult?
no, it's not neither good or bad. But exactly what you just described there. If someone's thinking, is he crazy? It's like they're a satisficer. So they're choosing the option based on what they're satisfied. You want to maximize the choice that you make. I don't go as far as that. I'm not looking, I don't care what anyone else is having. I'm like, I know what I want. I'm not veering from it. I don't want to try something new. And I don't care if it's boring. And I've had this same dish 99 times.
I love how a silly question.
We're so passionate about this part.
Turned into like an actual feel like we could go 20 minutes deep on all the different
This
personality
part.
types.
And you're just looking at us both like, you two, there's something wrong with both of you, and it's no small thing.
No.
So we're the same type of crazy. Or different.
Maximisers.
Okay, nice.
That's what we are.
Nice.
Boom.
Cool. So on that note, Anya, do you want to tee up the final and our favourite question of the week?
Yes. Adrienne, you're naked at the start of your next marathon and you can only bring 3 things with you. What are those 3 things going to be?
Oh my gosh. Have you asked this question to people before?
Every
Yeah.
person.
Why have I not prepared?
No, we don't prepare anyone.
You.
Try and maximise your way out of this.
Maximise my... Okay, 3 things. 3 any things.
Yeah.
Anything.
And I'm naked.
Yeah.
So does that mean I can't have clothes?
No,
Well, they
you-
can
you
be
could
your
3
things.
things.
Oh, okay, fine. Oh, okay, now I'm just getting creative. Okay, I'm gonna... Have I got to run a race?
You're
Yeah,
running
it's
a
a
marathon. You're on the
marathon.
start line of the marathon.
Okay, obviously I need some running shoes.
Okay.
So I've got my running shoes on.
Yeah.
No socks?
Oh, I never wear socks.
Okay.
I never.
You're
Oh
not
my
wearing
gosh, how
socks now.
have we not talked about this? I never wear socks, not even to run a marathon. I don't wear socks. There you
Crazy.
go. I'm crazy. So yeah, I've got running shoes on, no
We're,
socks.
just to clarify, we're not the same type of crazy.
He wears socks.
I wear socks.
I'm wearing a leotard.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully high-waisted, no chafe. And some sunglasses.
Fantastic.
Because at
Like
least-
that same energy that you had on that first 15-minute run, I look cool right
I
now.
look cool. And even if I don't, I'm wearing shades so I can just block out the haters. And also, I feel like you look like you've intentionally made that choice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? You're like, wow, she's confident. You go, girl. As rather than being like, I'm trying to cover that I'm naked. I think that's less. You've got to be bold. You've got to look as if it was intentional, even if it wasn't.
I also
That.
picked sunglasses.
Did you? And trainers?
No leotard.
No leotard.
Well, I think I'd look a bit odd in the leotard.
What did you choose? Are you just running naked? You're just running free?
Yeah.
That's
I have
ultimate
sunglassed shoes and a smartwatch.
Oh,
I need
wow.
it- I need it on my Strava.
Ultimate confidence, Ben.
Yeah, you've both got
I'm
the same-
so hairy, I'm basically fully clothed all the time.
What did you choose, Anya? Are you covered? Did you cover your
Leotard.
modesty?
Leotard watch shoes.
A watch, you see. You two, data. I was like, no, sunglasses. I'm like,
Vibes.
how I look is more important than the data. I think that says a lot about me. They're like, oh, she's one of those runners. She's a vanity runner. I'm definitely a fair weather runner. You watch my stats in the winter. It's like, excuse me.
You're an
she?
inspirational runner. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been amazing to chat to you.
Thank you for having me. It's been nice to be a guest on the other side for a change.
Amazing.
Amazing. Today's podcast was brought to you by Runna. If you want to train for any goal, download the app today. And don't forget, you can use the code Runna Podcast for a 2-week free trial.
Whether you enjoyed the episode or not, please like, share, follow, subscribe, do all of that nonsense, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. Wow, you made it all the way to the end of the podcast. And so for all of our loyal listeners, we have a special 15% off all of our Runna merchandise. If you want to look as cool as Anya, then go and use the code MyFastSocks for 15% off all of our Runna merchandise. And thank you again for listening.